You have never bought anything from Nvidia. You have probably never seen one of their products. You could not draw one from memory if I asked you to. There is no Nvidia in your house, no Nvidia in your pocket, no Nvidia on your desk. And right now, they might be one of the single largest things you own. Not a company you have heard of, a company you have invested in. Tens of thousands of dollars of your retirement possibly sitting inside a business you have never knowingly interacted with in your life. And here's the number that made me want to make this video. Nvidia is the most valuable company on earth. Around $5 trillion. Last year, it did $215.9 billion in revenue. And four customers accounted for 61% of it. 61% for buyers. That is not a typo, and it is not a small company with a couple of big clients. That is the largest business in human history. And more than half of what it sells goes to four phone numbers. My name is Ray, and I spend way too much time thinking about who is actually holding the thing when the music stops. If you have a retirement account, or an index fund, or a workplace pension, and you have never once looked at what is inside it, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Because today we are not talking about whether to buy Nvidia stock. I am not going to tell you to buy anything or sell anything. We are talking about something stranger. We are talking about a toll booth that everyone in the world has to drive through, and the fact that you already own a piece of it and nobody asked you first. Let us start with what they actually make, because almost nobody can say it out loud. Nvidia does not make artificial intelligence. They make the thing artificial intelligence runs on. That is the whole business. Here is the difference between their chip and the one in your laptop. Your laptop chip is a genius. It takes one hard problem and it solves it very fast, then it takes the next one at a time, brilliantly. Nvidia's chip is not a genius. It is a stadium full of people doing simple arithmetic at the same moment. Each one is slower than your laptop chip. There are thousands of them. For most of computing history, that was a strange and fairly useless machine. What normal software needs is one clever worker, not 10,000 mediocre ones. Then video games arrived. Drawing a picture on a screen means working out the color of 2 million pixels at once, and every pixel is easy. That is not a genius problem. That is a stadium problem. So Nvidia built stadiums, and they sold them to teenagers. And then somebody noticed that training an artificial intelligence is also a stadium problem, because that is all it is. Billions of tiny multiplications, all happening at once, adjusting numbers very slightly until the machine gets better at guessing the next word. Nvidia did not pivot into AI. AI walked into a building that had already been built for something else. Now look at what that accident did to the balance sheet. Last year, Nvidia's data center business, the AI part, brought in $193.7 billion. That is 89.7% of the entire company. The gaming business, the reason the company exists at all, is now roughly 8% of it. The video game company became a rounding error inside the AI company. Same building, same chips, different customers, but that is not the interesting part. This is. Nvidia's gross margin last year was 71.1%. Sit with that, because I think most people hear it and do not feel it. Gross margin is what is left from every dollar of sales after you pay for the physical thing you sold. 71% means that on $100 of chips, about $71 is still on the table before Nvidia pays a single engineer, rents a single building, or spends $1 on research. That is not a hardware number. Making physical objects is a brutal business. Car companies run around 10 to 15%. Airlines are a joke. Building things out of atoms and shipping them across an ocean is how you go bankrupt slowly. 71% is a software margin. It is what you charge when the price has nothing to do with what the thing cost you and everything to do with what happens to the buyer if they do not have it. And that is the actual product, not silicon position. So the obvious question, if the margin is that fat, why has nobody undercut them? This is capitalism. 71% is a flare sent up over open water. Every competitor on Earth can see it. And here is the thing nobody tells you. They can build the chip. They already have. Google builds its own. Amazon builds its own. AMD builds a competitive one. The hardware is not the moat, and it never really was. The moat is a language. Around 20 years ago, Nvidia started giving away a software toolkit that let programmers talk to their chips. It was not obviously a good idea at the time. It was expensive, it was slow to catch on, And for years, it looked like a hobby. Then university researchers picked it up because it was free and it worked. Then their students learned it. Then those students got jobs and built things in the only language they knew. Then the next generation learned it because that was what the existing code was written in. 20 years of that, compounding quietly, and the result is that essentially every AI researcher alive learned to think in Nvidia. So when a competitor arrives with a cheaper, faster chip, the question is not, is this chip better? The question is, are you willing to throw away every line of code your team has ever written, retrain 40 engineers, and lose a year finding out whether the new thing works? Nobody wants to relearn their entire job. Nobody wants to bet a company on relearning their entire job. That is the toll booth, not the chip. The fact that the road was paved in one language and everybody already learned to drive on it. Now, the part that matters to you. 4 customers, 61% of revenue. Let us talk about who those 4 actually are, because it is not a mystery. It is the enormous cloud companies, the ones renting you storage for your photographs. Slightly more than half of Nvidia's data center revenue comes from that handful of hyperscalers. Those 4 are expected to spend somewhere around $700 billion on capital expenditure this year, most of it on AI infrastructure, $700 billion in a single year from 4 companies. So the world's largest business is being carried on the spending decisions of 4 boardrooms. Not 4 markets, not 4 countries. 4 rooms with fewer than 50 people in them. And every one of those rooms is spending that money on the same bet. That AI demand keeps rising fast enough to justify it. Here is where it lands on you. Nvidia is now around 8% of the S&P 500. One company. 8% of the index that most retirement money in America sits inside. That is the largest single stock concentration in that index since records began in 1981. Read that again. Not since 2000, not since the dot-com bubble, since records began. Which means the diversification you thought you bought is not quite the diversification you have. You did not buy 500 companies, you bought 499 companies and a BET, and you were never asked. There was no form, there was no phone call. Your index fund rebalanced quietly, the way it is supposed to, and the biggest company got the biggest slice, the way it is supposed to. Nothing went wrong. The machine worked exactly as designed. That is what makes it interesting rather than scandalous. Now, I can hear the objection, and it is a good one, so let me give it properly. Nvidia earns this. That is the objection, and it is largely correct. This is not a company with a story and no revenue. $215 billion came in the door last year, up 65%. The cash is real, the demand is real, the technology-led is real, and it took decades of unglamorous work to build. Comparing this to a dot-com company with a logo and a dream is lazy, and anyone doing it has not looked at the numbers. All of that is true. I agree with all of it. And it misses the point because concentration risk is not an argument about whether a company is good. Nobody is claiming Nvidia is a bad business. The claim is narrower and duller. When one excellent company becomes 8% of your index, your outcome is no longer the average of 500 businesses. It is substantially the outcome of one. And the quality of that one does not change the arithmetic. Good companies can also be expensive. Good companies can also have 4 customers. Both things fit in the same sentence. And here is where I have to be straight with you because I said real numbers and no fantasy math. I own it too. If you have an index fund, so do I, and I did not pick it either. I am not telling you to sell anything. I have no idea what this stock does next, and neither does anybody who tells you confidently on the internet. Everything in this video is a description of a structure, not a prediction about a price. What I am telling you is that you should know what you own. That is it. That is the entire ask. Because most people believe they own a broad, boring, diversified slice of the American economy. And they mostly do. But roughly $1 in every 12 is currently riding on a single company whose customers are 4 other companies, all making the same bet at the same time in the same year. That is not a warning. It is a description. You can look at that structure and decide you are perfectly comfortable with it, and that is a completely reasonable place to land. Plenty of thoughtful people are there. What is not reasonable is not knowing. So, Back to where we started. You have never bought anything from Nvidia. You have never seen the product. You could not pick one out of a drawer, and a meaningful slice of the money you are counting on for the last 20 years of your life is sitting inside that company right now, doing whatever it is going to do. The strangest thing about modern investing is not that it is risky. It is how much of it happens without anybody telling you. And if you are wondering what actually happens when 4 customers decide they have bought enough for a while, that is a completely different video. And the numbers there are stranger than these. But for now, the next time somebody tells you that index funds are safe because they hold 500 companies, ask them one question. What percentage of it is the biggest one? Because until you know that number, you do not actually know what you own.